this is an experiment I'm doing this semester, that all the quizzes, the weekly quizzes have a due date. They're all due, they open on a Monday, they're due by Sunday of that week by 11:59 p.m. And I decided what I was going to do is, this is an experiment I'm doing this semester, that all the quizzes, the weekly quizzes have a due date. They're all due, they open on Monday. That is so weird when you hear your voice. So I decided that, so that's set in the syllabus, but I also said that if something happens and you can't take the quiz when it's due, it's okay. You don't have to email me permission. You can just take the quiz as soon as you reasonably can. The quiz will get flagged as late, but you will still have access to the quiz and you will still get 100% of the points. And so I want to see at the end of the semester, I'm kind of curious to see, is there a difference in scores from the students who take the quizzes on time versus the students who take them late? And if there isn't a difference, then maybe from this point forward, I'll have a deadline, but if students need to take it late, there won't be any penalty. So that was a little bit of the philosophy behind this question, why I set it up that way. So if they take it late, they can still earn full points. And so if the reverse happens, if students who take it late, they just get progressively further and further behind in the course and then they don't do as well in the course, then I have evidence for next time actually enforcing the deadline. And maybe next time I'd say, well, if you can't take it on time, there'll be a slight deduction in points. So anyway, I'm just curious to see what happens with that. So that was, that's my project. I did want to acknowledge that I am part of the Wisconsin Teaching Fellows and Scholars Program, and that this is a small piece of a bigger project, which is a Scholarship of Teaching and Learning project. And I just thought maybe you should know that if you wanted to do something like this, you can just do something like this, but I also was hoping to write it up and perhaps publish it and present it at different forums. And so I actually went through IRB to get this project approved prior to the start of the semester. And I can answer any questions that you have about that. And I was able to actually get everything approved prior to the start of the semester. These are my references, just for your information, and that concludes my presentation. I'm open for questions if you have any.
Do we have questions for right now before we get into Canvas itself?
I have a quick research question.
Yes.
Okay. So I know you said your students have a lot of valid reasons for taking it late, but are there any kind of patterns that might influence that group of students who will take them late? Like they're all the ones that are in intense professional situations, or anything that a researcher might say, oh well, the results are because everyone in that group, I don't know, was older than you, or
Oh, I see what you say. Like maybe is it maybe full-time versus part-time?
Yeah, something. I'm sure you've thought of that. I'm just curious.
So I hadn't thought of exactly that. I am not collecting any demographic, any personal information on these, on the students. I do have, they actually are participating in Pattern, the Pattern Learning Analytic Tool. There's James over there. If you have any questions about Pattern, Pattern is something where it's online, it's through the university, and they track their time, like they track how much time are they spending on physics, how much time are they spending on the reading material, how much time are they spending on their group project.
Right.
And so I didn't list it here, but I was hoping to look at patterns related to, does it have anything to do with how they spend their time? But maybe in the future, I would have had to get a higher IRB approval to get any demographic information like age, sex, GPA, what kind of school did they come from? Did they come from a research-intensive undergrad versus, maybe like they didn't? those are all, that's a really good point, but I would say for now, what I'm looking at, I am looking at patterns, but it's patterns on how they spend their time in the course. I think I saw.
We do have an active teaching lab on pattern that you can go back and look at. Did you do it first in chemistry?
Yeah, no, I think it was Rachel Bain.
Rachel Bain, yeah. And does pattern also, can you speak for a moment on pattern?
Yeah, so pattern is the learning analytics tool, the purpose of which is to help students identify their study patterns so that they can better study in the future. But it also has an instructor component in that all of the information students add is aggregated and shared with the instructor so that the instructor can see how are my students interacting with my course. You know, are they spending more time on homework than I thought, or not enough time on exam prep, kind of thing. So right now, the university, we're piloting it. The pilot has been slightly scaled back for the fall semester. We're hoping at some point to make it available to everybody. But if you're interested in learning more, I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you to see how pattern might fit into your course.
And then I think there's a question here.
The cognitive quizzes, do you have like a rough breakdown of how much is like remaining content for the week versus previous material? Like is it 50% current and connected, or is it just totally dealing with everything's treated?
I would say that it's totally cumulative. So this is the first time I tried it, and this is what I did, but I'm open to suggestions. If you have suggestions on different ways I could have done it. So what I did was the questions all come out of the required textbook. The textbook has a test bank, and I took those questions, and so this is how it's set up. Almost every week they read 2 chapters. And so the first week, like this week, they're reading chapters 1 and 2, and so there's 1 question from chapter 1, 1 question from chapter 2. Next week, they read chapters 3 and 4. So the quiz will have 1 question from chapter 1, 1 question from chapter 2, 1 question from chapter 3, 1 question from chapter 4.
And quizzes will get longer. as they
Yep,
go.
they get longer. I think at the end, by the end, there will be, I can't remember how many questions there are. I want to say 25, but don't quote me on that. So it does weigh heavier on the previous material, and the reason why I did that is, in the past, when they turn in their final paper, they have forgotten earlier things in the semester, and then they lose a lot of points on the paper when they forget something that they may have learned in week 3. And so what I'm trying to do is get them to remember those things so that when they get to the final paper, they don't forget the first half of the semester.
Yeah, and you could also do it like after the first half of the semester, 1 question from chapter 1, 2, or 3 instead of doing, so that the
Yeah.
first question isn't over, the first chapter isn't over. Yeah. But
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Weight it so that it's heavier on the latter material. That's a good point. I think there were there 2 more?
Just quick question. What was the length for you to get your IRB approved?
Okay,
It
that's
made it seem like really simple.
okay. So that's a slightly complicated question.
So it's long, it was long.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
All right. The short answer is I submitted it on a Monday. It was approved on a Wednesday.
Ah.
That's the short answer.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the longer answer is, so what I did was, after I got the project figured out in my head, and then I ran it by a bunch of people, and they shot over it, that I, went back and fixed it, and went back to different people until people were like, okay, yeah, that kind of seems like it makes sense. So then, after I felt like, okay, I got a good project, then I spent hours going through the payroll application, the education branch of the IRB. So whatever, went through all of that, several hours doing that, and then I had questions. There were some questions that just didn't make sense. So then I made an appointment, met with somebody from the education IRB for half an hour, and it was a really good discussion. I mean, they answered all of my questions, and then they asked me, they said, these are some things that we're going to be looking for. So what about blah, blah, blah? And then I'd say, oh, God, I didn't even think of that. What do I do? What do I say? And so then they helped me, well, you might want to change it this way. And so then I went back, spent several more hours fixing my IRB. application, submitted it. I think I submitted it on a Monday. On a Tuesday, it came back to me. They had some really minor comments. I addressed it, sent it back on a Tuesday. It got approved on Wednesday. The one other thing I would say is it did not get approved as a research study. It is considered a QI, a quality improvement project. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, but if you go online, you can, if you Google if you look on their website and say, UW-Madison website, and say, what's the difference between quality improvement versus research? This form will pop up, and if you can't find it, I can send it to you, that will talk about what is the difference between the two. And because it got categorized as QI, I believe that's why it went through the IRB much faster than if it had been categorized as a full-fledged research study. Because if it was a research study, then she wanted to know questions about effect size, and you don't have a control group, and you know what I mean. Then there were a whole bunch of other questions that I was like I got a sample size of 16. I mean, there's not a whole lot I can do with that, and so she helped me frame it so that it became a QI, and I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think that's why it got through IRB so much faster as a QI than a research study.
And that was my throwaway question. So thank you. It was really good answer. Do you give them study strategies for students to like say, oh, you've never taken tests like this before. You haven't normally. We're going to be doing this every week. It's going to be 1 through 20, but by the end of the semester, they're going to either be spending all day working on that or all week working on that, trying to make sure they get all the answers covered. How are you helping them prepare for this type of quiz?
So what I have them doing two different things. So one thing is they create their own crossword puzzle. They choose the terms out of the textbook. And I should say, most of the quizzes are low of Bloom's taxonomy. It's like the knowledge base where they just have to understand, what's an independent variable, what's a dependent variable. So they create these crossword puzzles, they create the terms, they put the definitions, they load them onto the discussion board. They have the crossword puzzle, and then in a separate file, they load the answer key. And then I encourage them to take each other's crossword puzzles. And if you don't know the answer, they provided the answer key. And you keep doing that every week. They add in new terms based on the chapter readings for that week. And so I'm hoping that will help them prepare. It's set up exactly like the quizzes, except they're not creating a quiz, they're creating crossword puzzles. So that's the main thing that I'm doing to help them. And every week the crossword puzzles are getting longer. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, this is not quite addressing your question, but every week a student signs up to present a chapter. So they get a little bit of a lecture, if you will, on that material. And then obviously, I'm assuming that the student who's doing the presentation learns the material very well. But it's really the crossword puzzle. So that is another one of my research questions, is those people who do the crossword puzzles. I think the crossword puzzles I made extra credit, and I want to see if those students who do the crossword puzzles, do they do better on the quizzes than those who don't.
Thank you.
So I love that you talked about distributed practice. There's a lot of, as you saw in an early slide, there's a lot of research about if you just give the students everything that they need to know for chapter 1, then you never revisit it again, as you saw, and it's been replicated across disciplines. People forget, right? You leave the room and you forget what it is that you heard 5 minutes ago oftentimes. But continually revisiting it is a really great way to keep that up. And I heard this at the POD conference, and I forgot what POD stands for, but Faculty Development Conference a couple years ago. Every quiz should be a cumulative quiz. Now, how to do that in a way that doesn't make the end quiz a really long one is a struggle, and I think that different approaches work differently for different people. But let's figure out how to do this in Canvas, right? How many of you are already teaching in Canvas, or have already taught? How many of you have already taught in Canvas last semester? All right, great. We're going to look to you as resources today. How many of you are teaching this semester in Canvas? All right, good. So you're already starting to dig into this a little bit, and you have some questions. And how many of you are interested in teaching in the spring in Canvas? All right, way to get ahead of the curve. Good. For the sheet today, and I would encourage you again to look at this from the the course that, have you all been able to get in? Yes, Julie?
So fun fact, if you create a Sandbox course and you want to invite people to be students in it, make sure you hit the publish button in the upper right-hand corner of your home screen, because we didn't do that, which is why none of you received invitations until the middle of the session.
We just made this course yesterday,
So
by the way.
you should now.
It looks
all
really good
have
for
An
yesterday's course.
invitation,
All right, that is a good fun fact.
yes.
So, now check your email, log into Canvas, and you should see a green box across the top of your Canvas thing saying, you've been invited to Active Teaching Lab. We have a paper copy here as well, and you can take notes on the back if you'd like to, and you can read through it. But there's a much better version with a link here, and it's embedded here. And we encourage the online version just because all of the links work on this version. If you click on the links in this version, it doesn't work. So it's harder to see the examples that are in blue here, but there are some great ones here. And if I can point you to a spot to start off right away, if you haven't already, let me make a bigger copy here. This part down here where it says easy experience quiz and surveys with embedded content. When you create a quiz, you have different options. You can create a quiz, a graded quiz, you can create a practice quiz, you can create a graded survey, which gives students points for completing the survey, but not points for getting the questions right or wrong. And that's a great way to do a muddiest point, for example, at the end of the class, where you're like, I want to hear how the course went for you today. Fill out the survey and I'll give you a point for filling it out, telling me what you remember or what you don't remember. But I don't care if you get the points correct or wrong, you're going to get the points anyway. Or an ungraded survey, which, good luck if they fill that out. I don't know it's hard to get people to fill out ungraded surveys unless you really get them invested in your course and you pay attention to their responses and they know that they're part of the course, that they have agency there. But check out some of these examples because that'll really help. How many of you have already created quizzes in Canvas, and what are your favorite or best advice for that? Yes, Lane?
I found that students really like to use Canvas as like a low stakes kind of accountability tool.
Okay.
So you're having them read, and there's they have to read a text, or they have to watch a lecture video. And I've had students come to me and say, Lane, I really liked using quizzes. I really like that you had quizzes as a low stakes assessment each week. That really helped me get motivated to actually do these readings because the assessment is graded. And even if it's graded just microscopically, it's something that propels them to get it done. Because, oh, this is part of my grade. I have to take this quiz. And if I want to do well in the quiz, I have to do these lectures and readings. And they come in. I really found that useful. Like just these low stake quizzes helped me see what was going to be on the major tests, helped me to really kind of stay up with the week's reading, then also propelled me, pushed me to do that reading as well. So just as a low stakes assessment and an accountability partner.
So one of the examples on the sheet is actually an experiment that I tried, which was to do all of the prep for the class as a quiz. So this is my Empower Learners lesson content as a graded quiz. If I go to modules here, you can see that I tried this both ways. There's a page that I have that has all the lesson outcomes and the lesson activities and a summary, then I've got video content in there, and I've got things that are like, think of 3 ways that you can let students co-design in Canvas, then click show to, so it's this lovely interactive page, right? Will people, generally, students, go through this before class in your experience? No, they won't, right? And, I put all this time and effort into making this beautiful thing, and, 7 of them will, but the rest won't. So the alternate way of doing this was saying, let's take the same content and make it a graded quiz. So, here, create me the quiz. It's low stakes graded quiz, so they don't have to get everything right on it, but if they do get things right, they get 4 points. Yeah, students will do anything for 4 points, right? Because that's the difference between the A, B, and the A, or the A, B, and the B. So the same things, lesson outcomes, lesson activities, this sort of stuff. And then the question, and there's the question 1. And you watch the video, and then you ask some questions about the video. Really easy to do. And this is a multiple answer one, so multiple things can be correct. I've even got little links in here of how to do these different things. So if they're like, oh, making the students use a profile picture is a co-design strategy, but I don't know how to do that. Now I can link to that, and it goes to an outside source. Now will they do that? Probably not unless they're really interested in it, but at least they get some of the general ideas, and then they get a point for getting that right. This is a bit of work to do this, to make this quiz. It's an easier way to do this, but it's better than the page. And it is a lot more work than the page. Now, the other option, for my second session, got the regular page that we've got here that they won't read. And then the same thing as a survey. This survey is only worth 2 points, but it's also much simpler. I mean, it took me, like, if I were to move all of my course content online, I would create these graded surveys first and give them 2 points for that. And then this semester after, I would say, okay, I can turn these into quiz questions now. So again, the same sort of thing, same sort of questions, but I don't have to choose the right answer because this is basically the same content with the little think of 3 things, and then here's a show thing, and then I say, what was my question? What questions do you still have? All right, they don't even have to answer that. They just have to blah, 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 blah. But at least I know that by answering that question, whether they get it right, there's no right or wrong answer for that one, right? But I'm asking them to reflect on it, and then I'm saying, I'll give you a point for that. So that's a couple of ways of using quizzes. The third thing that I want to, and all of this is available for you to take a look at, of course. The third one that I think is really kind of exciting is, how many of you have heard of H5P? H5P is interactive content. It's pretty easy to do. It's actually amazingly easy to do. It does not yet play well with Canvas as far as going to the gradebook, but you can still use it in a quiz.
Are they working on that?
They are working on that, so I'm going to send a preview. So this is the kind of stuff that you can do. Cloudberry is, you can present a presentation. It can have its own quiz in there in H5P. So what color do Cloudberries have? Pale red, I think, right? Oh, nope. I'm Carol Red. Let's say Sweden, huh? Hey, all right. So these are easy to make. And then, so there's 10 different slides in that I can do, right? And interactive video is easy to do in there. It's kind of a fun thing. But then I can ask my own question that is tied to the grade book. So
you use that to just engage them, get them thinking, but they don't know, or they may not care if that's something captured in the grade book.
right,
It's just there to stimulate engagement in some way.
right, and it could be that you create some sort of a module that is sort of interactive that they can play with, and then based on that experience of playing with that, then they can answer questions. So that's kind of a neat way to do that. You can have them do an interactive video that has these fun questions in it. So this is making a smoothie sort of thing, and we've got strawberries, and you can say, this is preparing a multiple choice quiz. All right, oh, did I miss it? No. I got out of there too early, sorry. I hit a button. But the multiple choice quiz gives you a chance to do things like, what kind of a berry is this? All right, good, check, correct. And in this one, I created this whole thing as a quiz question that was just text. And then I said, okay, once you have that done, ask the question. And this is really, Cliff already answered this question, how does interactive video make you feel? And after this next question is, why am I doing this? What is the point? So these are some fun things that you can do with quizzes in Canvas, and there's some sort of advanced things to do with quizzes in Canvas. Try to make a quiz? All right, all the navigation bars on the side here, you can only see home and modules and quizzes, I think, because all the rest of them that you can see on mine, you can't see because you're students. I've hidden those away so that they don't distract the students, because you can get lost pretty easily sometimes. Create a quiz, name the quiz, we're going to call it that. Standard rich text editor box here, I can put in a description. Today's learning outcomes are da 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 da. Or last week we looked at the process of da 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 da. So here's a quiz based on that process. So intro stuff here. And then you go up to questions here. And choose some questions. New question. Question 1, I'm going to ask about cumulative quizzing. I can choose multiple choice, true, false, from the blank, from the multiple blanks, multiple answers, multiple drop-downs, matching numerical answer formula. It works with LaTeX if you are in engineering or anything mathy that uses formulas. It uses it accepts LaTeX language. Essays, file uploads, or text with no question. And that's what I did with that other video with the smoothies. You could just put in something there as sort of a background thing. Yes?
What is a file upload question?
What is a file upload question? A file upload question is submit your treatise on da-da-da-da-da as a Word document.
What about a photograph?
Or show a picture of a playground in South Madison that is da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, good question. All right, so question here is cumulative testing good? And then, of course, the top one is your correct answer. But you can also, by clicking on the little buttons here, make any one of them the correct answer. Canvas will automatically mix up the questions, so the answers, so that the top question is not always the right answer, because otherwise your students would figure that out very, very quickly.
John?
Yes?
When you put the videos in and the H5P stuff in, was that just using an embed link that was in the upper bar there?
Yeah, no. That was yes and no. On the very bottom of the medium, embed external content into your quiz as an iframe.
Okay. Got it.
So, and let's just talk about that for just a second here. You can, and I discourage it, in the text box editor here, well, this works very well. You can click on Kaltura and include a Kaltura media thing. That'll link to your Kaltura account, I believe. It's waiting right now, but eventually it'll come up and let me do that. You can link directly to a YouTube account this way as well. And any YouTube video, it should let you just search for a YouTube video. And YouTube's got videos on everything. So it's really a great source. And you can have your students make videos, which is even better. So then you can just embed it this nicely. And then you can ask your question. What do you think of this? All right, that's the right answer. I think that's the right answer. These little boxes here are really important, I think. Give your students feedback. So here's right answer feedback. If they choose this one, a little thing will pop up and say, congratulations, you're right. Cumulative. Quizzing is super. And this is a great way in these things to revisit the main outcomes from the previous week. Revisit them right there as the takeaways, because when they see that, that's one more time that they've seen your content. And that's part of that distributed practice. Every time that they can see it, again, you're reminded of it, that helps those neuron synapses get deeper and better and stronger. So that's a really good way. So that's the green box, and that's a positive answer. The wrong answer is, this is an opportunity to redirect. Instead of just saying, no, you're wrong, you're a stupid student, you should drop out of school. You can say, take a look at the material again, revisit this. Why do you think the way that you're thinking? And sort of encourage them to redirect. Now that's just for at the question level, or at the answer level. For the whole question, you've got 3 more boxes that you can give. So if they get the question right, here's another chance. This might be overkill, but here's another chance to give them a little bit more information about, you did a great job on this question. You should go to grad school for this. Or the wrong answer, think harder about this and maybe change something. And then this one, regardless of whether they get it right or wrong, you give them feedback. Since they've already answered the question, this would be a great time to maybe explain why you asked that question, or connect it to other questions that have happened that you get asked them ahead of time. So there's our thing. We can save it. We can save and publish. We'll save and publish, and now you should be able to all take this test, this amazing, beautifully titled test, which we can preview. It has not a terrible intro, and I did something wrong when I don't have any questions.
Yeah, you made a very common mistake. If you go back,
I'm going to keep editing this quiz.
when you go to questions,
Oh, I didn't hit done.
at the bottom of questions, you have to hit update questions.
Go and make questions then. Scroll down to the bottom, so, right there.
There you go. Update questions.
This guy.
Don't forget to hit this button.
It should be automatic, right? If I go down here, it should be like, all right, I'm just going to assume everything's good.
So much is automatic. Yes, really, there's a couple of places.
Yeah, it's true, because a lot of Canvas, there are things that you do, and it's like, I'm auto-saving that, I'm good, we're good to go, you don't have to worry about this. But a couple of spots, it's like, all right, I know you got my back, Canvas, and they're like, no, I'm sorry, I don't have your back on this one.
So, John,
Yeah.
can you go back one? I don't know, maybe go to the previous tab. I have a very specific question.
Okay, about making a question?
No.
About the overall?
Scroll to details.
Yeah.
Scroll down.
Oh, right, here's all of that stuff about,
Can you talk a little bit about
Yes, thank you.
some of that stuff?
great. So there's where you can choose whether this is, what type of a quiz this is. Is it a practice quiz that they can take over and over and over again until they get it right, and then they're all ready to come into your course and take the written one or whatever. Is it a graded quiz that they just do at the time? Graded survey and ungraded survey, I talked a little bit about already. You can have the answers shuffled. Is the answers shuffled?
The answer is shown.
So the answers are not automatically shuffled. So students in my class, they would quickly learn that just hit A,
If that's,
hit that top one, because it's always right, because John didn't remember hitting his box.
yeah, and it's worth noting that that is a shuffle for the entire quiz. So if your questions are set up like all of the above, that's going to be a problem if you all shuffle it, because the all of the above now doesn't really apply. So
So it should be all of the others.
all of the others, or, you know, yeah, if you say, that's not your answer, that's not going to work. If you turn that checkbox on.
All right, good to know.
So you can't shuffle the order of the questions, like,
That's a separate task that can be done, but that's not what this one is, yeah.
can somebody show me how to do that at some point today?
Yeah, it's kind of subtle, it's not really it's not an auto checkbox. Can you go on over to the question tab? So you, scroll down to the bottom, you got the three buttons for creating either a new question or a question group or find questions. But the question group, that's kind of the answer here. The question group is, oh, I'm sorry, John. Okay.
Please.
The question group is primarily advertised, so that's where you go to create like a pool of 20 questions. And when you click on question group, it'll make a box, oh, you did right there, so you can pick 5 questions out of 20. That's kind of the rationale, that's what it began as, in my mind. Then that way students would only get presented with 5 of a pool of 20 questions. That would be randomly selected 5. But what we found out, I tested this a while back, is that yeah, if you have 20 questions and if you just put them inside of this container here and you say pick 20 of the 20 questions, then it will actually present the entire quiz as a big pool of 20 questions, but it just jumbles through.
So then I have to, like, let's say in those 20 questions, I have to like give it a name, like quiz number 3, and then here I would say quiz number 3, because what I want is I don't want students sitting next to each other,
Sure.
taking the quiz together.
Actually, so John has a question right there, and you can actually grab that. Actually, I think you have to create the group first. So finish creating this group, John, the red button there.
Yeah, another red button.
Another red button. So now grab that question up there with the little 4x2 dot grab handle, drag it down into that box, boom. And now, so basically you just put all of your questions, you're not worried about naming your questions particularly. You just start building. And notice there's a little plus button now that actually lets you build questions within this group. And you get all the other question functionality, all the other question options and question types. You build them all within that group, and now it does that. It'll either pick the 5
Okay.
of 20 that you provided here, or in this case, 20 of the 20. But each time it randomizes the sequence of it. So that was actually about 2 weeks ago. We kind of tested that out to make sure that was on.
Thank you. I should have just called you guys to begin with. I
Yeah,
could not figure out how to
it
do
would be
this.
so much easier if they just had a button on the other screen that just says jumble all my questions.
Yeah.
You know, and we were but that works just as well.
All right. Thank you. And then,
So a related question, if we, thinking about distributed quizzes, I could imagine for, let's say, a chapter 1 and 2, having some low-level Bloom taxonomy questions, just to make sure you've read, and then some that are higher, evaluate or compare and contrast chapter 1 and 3. But this isn't going to be smart enough to know that, so should I have different groups
I should
based on the
say-
levels? Because then,
I
that
see,
would be,
John,
did you understand?
Yeah, there's a, go to the group again, go to edit this group, a little pencil button there. And you go to build a group, that's very interesting, because you're allowed to pick how many questions of the pool, that's the first box, and the second one is you're assigning a standard number of points per question. So if you had, so it does not allow you to say,
This is this level.
you know, here's 20 questions, some of them are worth 5 points, some of them are worth 1 point, and therefore jumble all the sequence. It's going to want to assign a standard point to all of them. So you may be right in that you can create 2 or 3 different groups. The first group is worth 1 point apiece, the second group is worth 4 points and 5 points.
So then potentially I could jumble within groups, but put them all in one quiz, so the grade book, or,
Say that again.
I'm just trying trying to work with this idea of distributed quizzes, because I currently might make the mistake of having quizzes be by module and then have tests be multiple tests cumulative. So the question is there a way, if I'm grouping my questions and I wanted to select from chapter 1 and 2 that are worth 1 point, or maybe 5 on the first quiz that are worth 1 point, and 2 that are higher order thinking from a different group. But by quiz 4, I want now a mid-level full taxonomy, so group C, I'll call it, and 2 of those and only 1 of the basic terms, so that, for what John said before, so it's not getting longer and longer, but you're actually helping the students return to that beginning material and think at the higher level that you're pushing.
Yeah, I think I would probably, if I'm hearing correctly, just create multiple groups. Use that one option, create multiple groups.
But then with
One
multiple
focus.
groups, can they all go into one quiz?
Absolutely.
They
yeah,
can, that's my
yeah,
basic
yeah.
question.
Well, actually, I assume so. Scroll down, yeah. There's still a button outside of that group to make another new group. So you can make another new group, and you could have this one worth 2 points. And put
That
different
would work,
questions inside of
okay.
it.
All right.
So you can, within the same
Go on.
quiz, you can have question 1 is worth 1 point, question 2
That's
is
fine.
worth 3 points.
I'm sorry, yeah, I was just meaning within that group, if you're looking to
Right.
jumble the sequence, any questions within that one group have to be the same back.
Right, I see what
But
you're
yeah,
saying.
multiple groups.
Can I ask a follow-up question? If you want to create a quiz that's worth 10 points, but you want to have extra questions that are bonus points, does Canvas allow you to do that?
I don't think so, because you're not really, you'll notice that when you go back to the details page of the quiz, you're not identifying total points per the quiz. You're identifying total points for each of the individual questions, and all the more questions you have in there, that's going to basically auto-tally what the points are. So I'm not sure how you could.
You couldn't get like 12 out of 10 or something, that would be bonus.
Well, it's kind of funny, you can go to the grade book, you can do anything you want to the grade book, and you can, but I don't know how to, I don't know how to say, put in 12 points worth of questions if the quiz is only worth 10 points.
So you're gonna love this next thing that I say. The quizzing tool is being redone by Canvas. So all of this in spring
It's supposed to be all pretty good.
should be better and easier. They should have more interactive stuff, more question answers. This should all be redone. So the fun thing about Canvas versus D2L or Learning UW that we had before, Desire to Learn, is Desire to Learn, we had one instance and it stayed all solid for the whole year unless there was like some critical thing that broke, and then they might redo it during winter break or whatever. Canvas updates every 2 weeks. So we get little changes here and there all across Canvas every 2 weeks. Now, as far as supporting that goes,
Many of those changes you don't see, they're going to be kind of behind the scenes functionality, that just improves, cleans up, like any piece of software.
95% of it's behind the scenes, but there's that 5% every once in a while that we're like, I don't remember this being here, what does this do? And that makes our lives a little bit more exciting. And it might also make your life as an instructor a little bit more exciting. So in spring, we'll have a different thing, and we'll see it, and hopefully we'll have a chance to experiment with it before it gets turned on, but probably not, and then we'll learn it all over again. We are out of time, and usually we try to have much more hands-on stuff. So come back next week with a Canvas sandbox for you to play in, and you can get in and dig around in these things. In the meantime, you're all members of the Canvas course here, and you can go in and explore stuff on your own. You can access this sheet. We give you all kinds of fun stuff to do here at different levels. Easy stuff to do, medium stuff to do, and hard stuff to do if you have more of a challenge. We would ask you that, regardless of whether you enjoyed or didn't enjoy it, whether you learned something or didn't learn anything, if you could fill out our evaluation sheet, because we use these to make each session better.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and please help me thank Elisa for sharing her project on quizzing.
Thank you.
next week, grab some coffee and bagels on the way out.
Sure.
Hey, John, can I ask you?
Yes. And stick around for questions, we've got through till 10.
Doesn't show.
Yeah, it tells me it sucks, so when I try to
Now,
submit it,
okay, now, this may be,
is this because I'm not?
see, right now, you're just I think you're previewing it, right?
Yep.
So this, and I have to accept that may be sort of thing, you don't, there isn't fully
So
operational.
if they, if that
I'm gonna jump over to the settings and this side
trash,
is
does that mean?
All right, slow down, where is it? There we
I guess I just don't understand that part. Does that mean that, like, they take the quiz, but they don't know the answers to it? Or they take the quiz and they get second answers, and their answers are incorrect, but they can see the surfaces?
I think that once you see the quiz responses, as soon as they get done with that question, or maybe it's at the end of the quiz,
Oh,
I don't know which
yes.
one it is, such like that. But they can go back and review. It's like immediately seeing the graded stuff versus, after each attempt versus,
So if I didn't put this on once after each attempt, then what would they get? Would they only see, you see what I'm saying? I'm a little confused.
without response done, after every time that they take your test, they can see their quiz responses. If you don't want them to keep referring back